Well, welcome students to the today's program. The topic of today's program is or discussion is terrorism, its international perspective and concern of India, internally and externally. Now the term terrorism is itself is a very terrifying term nowadays. Throughout the world, it has spread so greatly and so pervasively in all countries that people become actually really terrified at the utterance of this word. But how dangerous this phenomenon and how really this is threatening to the security of any country is yet to be assessed by the political scientists, the political practitioners, and the researchers. What is the definition of terrorism? Terrorism cannot be defined so clearly or in such a shortcut way, no definition can be got. It is because the researchers, the political scientists, and the journalists, they differ widely with each other in defining the term terrorism. Whether it can be defined or not, whether there can be any clear-cut definition or not, is not the matter now. What is most important is that people feel it and they feel dreaded. They are very much apprehensive of such a situation which throws them into a terroristic condition or situation in the country, in their society. So it is to be assessed by the people themselves, by the states themselves who are affected by the acts of terrorism. Now, when this terrorism originates, this is the question. It has been there from time immemorial because people fought with each other to grab lands, to terrorize others. They used many violent tactics inside their country. That is the base or the origin of terrorism, we can say. But it has changed its face from time to time with the changing society, changing pattern of politics, national and international. We know that there had been many revolutions in the world. The most famous revolution, we can say, was the French Revolution of 1769. And this 1794, the writer or the thinker, Beowulf, said that terrorism is a word which can be applied to the use of politics or governments by Robespierre, the leader of the French Revolution. And this is because he terrorized the people to augment his rule, augment his own interest, and to perpetuate his regime. And we know that there is a thing called guillotine. Several peoples whom Robespierre did not like had to be guillotined, had to be killed by the instrument of guillotine. He created sort of terror, and that period has been described by the historians of all sorts as reign of terror. So this terrorism is not only associated with non-state actors. There are non-state actors and there are state actors. Robespierre was the state actors and non-state actors are also there. And now terrorism is an instrument or weapon which has been taken up by the individuals, by the groups, but all they are non-state actors. And these non-state actors are also abated or encouraged or funded from outside also. When they are funded from outside or when they are sent from outside, that is a cross-border terrorism or that is the international that constitutes the international perspective of terrorism. And terrorism, whether it can be defined or not, is terrorism. So individual, group, state sponsored terrorism may be there. This is in a word, or in short we can say, is unlawful activities or threat of unlawful violence that inculcates in the minds of the people to hurt the government, to hurt the society. It demolishes the base of confidence of the people by demolishing the government, by trying to dismantle the government, by trying to create some fear in the minds of the people so that they do not take any or cannot take any active part to support the government to curb terrorism or curb the enemy. This is the intention of this terrorism. These terrorists pursue generally the goals of political, religious or ideological issues. A terrorist can sacrifice his life for the sake of some perceived ideologies, perceived so-called patriotism. They can do that, terrorists. But that does not mean the goal or their objectives, whatever they stand for, does not mean that the way or the method they use, that is violence, killing of people, hijacking, these are the methods, hijacking of flights or planes, killing of people. These methods or methods and terrorism are good. This cannot be said. This cannot be accepted. So terrorists can play many tricks, many tactics for some reasons, religious, political, etc., etc. To spread political hegemony, to spread religious hegemony inside the country. There may be many groups, religious groups, and they can fight with each other. And the government will try to curb it. So to terrorize the people, to terrorize the government, to make the government mummified, they will try to use these methods that is called violence or violent methods. Hijacking, assassinations, these are very common things in the exercise of terroristic activities. And it is a sort of war also, warfare, which you cannot accomplish by regular armies against some government or some persons. Then you have to resort to this type of tactics, and that is terrorist tactics. That is sort of warfare also, we call it. And this, coming down from the history, if we come to the present era or age, we shall see that since 1970s, these terroristic activities had been on the rise. It has earned the worldwide attention of the people. Since 1970s, there were Basque conflict, there was Israeli and Palestinian conflict. These conflicts were not political mere. These conflicts were laced or decorated by so-called terrorist activities also, by both sides, the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. And following this, did arise another phenomenon. It is suicide attacks. Suicide attacks. The attackers know that I will be killed. I will be killing myself, committing suicide in my pursuit to achieve some goal by killing others. There is a ideological bent, religious bent may be there, but that does not mean that suicide attack, which is he's sacrificing his life, but he is doing irreparable damage to the society, to the confidence of the people, and to the government also. So this suicide attack has gained some popularity among the terrorists because that is a very low-cost activity on their part. Only one or two persons will kill a number of persons in a public place, religious, political gatherings, and they will achieve their end. They think so, they will achieve their ends. But so you have to make only one person prepared for that. You do not have to make a vast army or big army to achieve your achievement, to get your achievements. We can here refer the suicide attacks of 1980s and September 2001, 11 September 2001, on the twin attack on the twin tower. It was in USA. Two planes had been hijacked and they had destroyed the twin towers, killing number of people, hundreds and hundreds of people were killed. Perhaps more than 3,000 people were killed there. Serial bombing attack or bombers was in Mumbai train, July 2006, and also attacks in Mumbai 2008, Taj Bengal and the railway station, Victoria railway station in Mumbai. So many people had been killed. So many people. That was abated by Pakistan, it has been proved. Kasab was deployed. There were many others, but Kasab survived and he had been tried and later hanged to death. But this type of terrorism was nothing new in India. We know Kashmir, that was cross-border terrorism. And many soldiers, many innocent persons had been killed by these insiders and people coming from outside also, sent by Pakistan, equipped by the Pakistani army and soldiers or government as such. So this cross-border terrorism constituted a very great danger to the security of India. It was international terrorism in that sense because it is coming from the other side of the border. So this terrorism which we saw in our own country had been battering us for a long time. Kashmir very intensively and extensively, and in other parts also of India. This terrorism had not been taken into account so seriously by the Western powers. It took it very seriously when terrorists attacked Osama bin Laden's force, attacked the Twin Tower, demolished it in the USA. In UK also, there were many terrorist activities. And we can quote here some statistics, the incidents, the 61,000 incidents, terrorist incidents throughout the world, global terrorism, 61,000 incidents took place. Non-state actors, and 140,000 deaths had been caused by these activists, terrorist activists, between 2000 to 2014. Such was the dimension, such was the length of the perpetrators or the terrorists. We know in 1980, before that, in Italy, Bologna, there was a railway station there, and that great bombing was done over there. 85 people, it resulted in the death of 85 persons. 85 persons died over there. We know the attack of the terrorists in Russia, Chechnya, the Chechenian attack, September 1, 2004, in a school. So many children had been killed by the terrorists. Why? Were the children their enemies? Did the children stand foil to their activities? No, they had no concern with these children. Innocent people too have no concern with that. Then why? It is because to create panic in the minds of the people and to show that their government is incapable of protecting them, to destabilize the situation, to destabilize the politics, to break the infrastructure, so to say. That was the motive. That is the motive of the terrorist. They may succeed temporarily, but ultimately terrorism did not pay anywhere in any country. They could not achieve the goal they intended to achieve by this tactics. We know that terrorists may arise from the right or the left political parties. The left and the right, they do not have any distinction so far as terrorism is concerned. It is because it is not that the rightist party will say that I will not take up the cudgel against anybody to terrorist means. By terrorist means I shall not fight. They will do it for the sake of the power. In all countries, we see in a democratic setup also, for temporarily they break the democratic, they hurt the democratic fiber of the society, democratic fiber of the politics, and to achieve power, to keep themselves settled in power. But afterwards they withdraw it from there. And they preach about peaceful negotiations, peaceful continuance of government, etc., etc. But to come to that position, they use tactics of terrorism. And even when they are in power, they can use that tactics too as a state power, state-sponsored terrorism, to curb others. That can they do. That is also, we shall say, to retain the power, to keep themselves settled in power. So, terrorism is not a thing which has no leftist or rightist orientation. If we see the leftist orientation, we shall see that in the Communist Manifesto also. Communist Manifesto 1848, prepared by Marx and Engels. It is a social, political and economic manifesto as such, but it also contains the element of terrorism, elements of violence. Terrorism comes from violence. Violence and revolution are not cannot be equated. Violence is different from revolution. And now violence, when you put violence on the agenda, you are indirectly, may not be directly, you are indirectly putting the concept of terrorism in it. Because you have to terrorize the people, a segment of people, to gain revolutionary power. Maybe a great number of people are with you and a small microscopic minority belonging to the other side of the population or revolution, but you are trying to catch them by any means. You are trying to destroy them by any means for the sake of, in the name of revolution, for the sake of revolution, whatever you call it. You see, when we are talking about a terrorist, we mean that he is striking some terror in the minds of the government, in the minds of the people, innocent people particularly, non-combatants. This we mean. But there should also be a very fine division among them. Because one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. For example, say the freedom fighters of our country, when they fought against the British colonial rulers, were dubbed as terrorists by the British. But people welcome them as their saviors, as their freedom fighters. Now, what is the difference between the terrorists which we see today and the freedom fighters? It is that these freedom fighters did not intend to inculcate fear in the minds of the common people, in the minds of the common Indians. They wanted to inculcate fear or strike hard in the minds of the British rulers, the police, the intelligence, and so on and so forth. So they were dubbed terrorists by the British colonial rulers or the bureaucrats, not by the people. People did use the term terrorist not in a pejorative sense regarding them. So, but when one is trying to hurt the people, whatever be its religion, to create fear in their minds, in the bazaar place, in the schools, they may be Christians, they may be Muslims, no matter, in all the countries, in Iran, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, everywhere this happened. And most of them are Muslims or had been Muslims. So, Syria, Nigeria, there. So, they try to create the fundamental motto or the motive of these terrorists is to create some fear in the minds of the society to get themselves entrenched on the soil of the society and to bring them to power, political power. These terrorists are not freedom fighters. They are aggrandizers of their self-interests. Now, again, I will say, you see, mention the name of Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin, the Israeli Prime Minister. But before that, he fought against the enemies with his terrorist tactics. He was described as a terrorist. In fact, he used these terroristic tactics to gain power for the Israelis, no doubt. Now, when he became the Prime Minister, when he negotiated with Egypt for the establishment of peace between them or among them in the Middle East, he had been awarded Nobel Peace Prize. He was considered not terrorist, but a peace-loving person, Democrat, and he was awarded Nobel Peace Prize. Similarly, Nelson Mandela, who had spent 27 years inside the jail in South Africa, was a terrorist. But after release, after becoming of power in South Africa, Nelson Mandela has been awarded Nobel Prize for peace. So today you are a terrorist, tomorrow you may not be. Who is considering this point of difference between the two? It is a great enigmatic matter, I would say. So Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Nigeria, all these countries have been affected by terrorism. There is no doubt about it. And the groups, Hamas, Haram, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIL, these groups practice terrorism. They are still alive, not that they will not be. And their outfits are there in all the countries where particularly I would say that it is seen, it is found, detected that a large sections of the Muslim community is involved in this. Innocent Muslims are not. Who are innocent? Those who want peace and those who do not want to get themselves involved in any such violent activities because they have their families, their children, their interest, their business, etc., etc. So why these people will get engaged in this? They are sometimes violently dragged into these violent activities. The young people, young persons, colleges, the school level are dragged into it. They are made to participate in it. In Afghanistan, we had seen this. In some other countries also, young are allured by some lucrative rewards. And also, I would say that by Islamic ideologies, that may be wrong ideology, not Islamic. I would say, I am not saying that Islam teaches it to do that, but Osama bin Laden-like people, they teach them that this is Islam, and they believe it, and they join in the forces of the terrorist activities. The forces hostile to democracy, the forces hostile to peace, hostile to society. So, terrorism is a thing which cannot be uprooted. In India in particular, I would say, or in underdeveloped countries, I would say, cannot be uprooted unless the level of development of the people can reach to that point where they will, and education will reach that point where they will realize that this is suicidal, mass suicidal affair. A very great and interesting thing to be noted, which is ignored by some historians and analysts, is that the rise of terrorism in its intensity has increased, especially after the fall or downfall of the Soviet Union, the communist power, 90s, in the period of 90s, 93. During that time, till that time, after the Second World War, the Western countries, I mean the imperialist countries, the USA, UK, France, Germany, etc., they found Soviet Union as a bulwark to invade the other countries, Islamic countries in general. Muslims were a little bit safe, no doubt, when Soviet Union was there, because Soviet Union fought against those imperialist countries, imperialist power. Now, when the wall collapsed, there was no barrier to the American forces, to the Western forces to control the Muslim power, Muslim countries. So they know it well, or they knew it well, that they cannot fight the Western power with regular armies. So they did take to the terrorist activities to harass them, to show them their power, that we the Muslims are not alone. All over the world we are united to spread or perpetuate the Muslim or Islamic ideology. There is a wrong step and wrong perception, no doubt. Perhaps most Muslims will not support it, but still they are doing it. And these people are very minorities. The mischievers or misdoers are always in the minority camp, but they are very powerful, and the silent majority, they take the advantage of the silence of the silent majority. Terrorism has become a global phenomenon, and it will not stop there unless the large sections of the largest section of the Muslims, largest sections of the peace-loving people, Christians or others, do realize that this will kill their own communities. I would here lastly say that the prophetic statement by a British historian who said that in future there will be clash of civilizations. He meant mainly the Christian civilization and the Islamic civilizations. This will be the ultimate clash, ultimate war in the world. And the signs of this, in the form of terrorism, the signs of this are coming up to our great surprise and to our great dismay. We hope that the world will come out of this shadow of fear. People are crying for peace all over the world, and terrorism has spread so big in such a way in all the countries that UNO has to take into account the dangerous phenomenon. Now, anti-terrorism committee has been formed in UNO, and we know that the meeting of this anti-terrorist or anti-terrorism activities will take place in India in 2023, October. And people did not believe, the Western countries did not believe that terrorism was such a dangerous thing till they had been attacked, as I said earlier. Now we have to accept the fact that India is the 8th most affected country in the rank in terms of terrorism. As most part of India, people in most part of India are peace-loving and go through a united democratic form in the political work of their system. Terrorism has not gone deep into it, into our soil. So, India is very much free from this, but it is in terms of external aggression by certain countries abetting terrorism inside India, Kashmir was a great problem to us till that day. India has ranked 8th. We hope the Indian people, the youths, will take note of this and will take their due course of democracy with respect, diligence, and all sorts of violence, even regarding this franchise. Democratic activities should stop, and they should come to stop it unitedly for the development, for the political and economic beautification of the state also. Otherwise, a big country, a great country like India, which is now in a leading position in the G20 group, also Group 20, economically India will prosper. And to prevent this, toward this economic progress, there may be some skirmishes, there may be some political forces hostile to development and democracy. I hope that with the able leadership of the present Indian political leaders, this will come a cropper. Thank you very much.